Hello everybody, Oliver G here from the Earful Tower, taking you from A to Z through the alphabet for Paris. And if you're brand new here, I've done this idea before, but this time we're doing it with all new letters. We're up to letter E, and this time around it stands for embassy, not least because the timing is superb. I just went to an E for enormous bash at the US Embassy to mark the 250 years of American independence. So it's the 4th of July party, weirdly enough hosted on the 3rd of July. Somehow I got a golden ticket. I mean, as an Australian podcaster in Paris, I scratch my head every time I get invited to these kind of things. But I was there, and it was the party of the year, I think. So I just want to share with you what happens at such an event, on such an occasion, at such a venue. So E is for embassy. The music from Pres Maxson is his new take on Edith Piaf's La Vie en Rose, which seems a little fitting, I think, for this party. And I'll walk you through it, but let's start with the music. So usually for this kind of episode I have my wife as a co-host, my wife Lena, but she was not invited to the party and absolutely refused to hear about it again. No, she didn't really, but she wasn't invited, and that's one of the things with these parties is they are very, I guess the numbers are pretty tight, and there are a lot of people I talk to who are asking around, did you get a +1? No, you didn't get a +1? Doesn't happen really. Not many people get +1s. At least none of us minions who are podcasters and so on. But you're stuck with me. And as I talk you through what happened, I'm going to avoid, as I always do, I'm going to avoid talking about politics. This is rather talking about the venue and the party itself. So, let's rewind a little bit. It's the 250th year to celebrate the creation, the independence of America, and France was really involved in the whole process. So France backed America from the beginning. There's a great relationship between the two countries. The embassy here, the US Embassy in Paris, is one of the biggest embassies of them all. It's right next to the British Embassy, and the US ambassador's residence is a real pearl. So for you guys who've been listening to this podcast for a while, I guess, not that long ago, I did the previous ambassador's sort of farewell video to Paris, in which she took me through a lot of the rooms of that ambassadorial residence that no one gets to see. So even at these parties, which are often on the ground floor of this residence, people don't typically get to go upstairs. And that video that I did, we went all over the residence and saw all kinds of beautiful things. It was very lovely the way that we had it filmed by Harry, and the video went, I think, understandably quite viral. Now this party on the 3rd of July wasn't at all that kind of party. It was more of a garden party. In fact, I don't think anyone went inside except maybe the ambassador and the special guests themselves. And when I say special guests, I'm talking about music by Andrea Bocelli. He was there in the flesh singing, and I'll tell more about that in a second. But also the billionaire Bernard Arnault. I think he was listed as the guest of honor, whatever that means, and he spoke as well. So this is the guy behind LVMH. So he was on hand. His name wasn't on the invite as well. But what happens at these parties? So in this case, they did the entry from the back of the garden, which I didn't know that was even possible, actually. So you're down near the Concorde, the big square where you've got those fantastic, like the Crillon Hotel is there, and the Hôtel de la Marine Museum just a little further along, and you're on that little garden near the Champs-Élysées. And so you go through a bunch of security, you get a little band on your wrist, and then you head into the garden. And I would imagine that there were probably about 2,000 people in this garden, which gives you a bit of an idea of the sheer size of it. Which, I mean, if you haven't been to Paris or you don't know Paris very well, firstly, no one has a garden in this city. And the idea of having a garden big enough for 2,000 people is wow, it's wild, really, isn't it? So what happened? I went in, on the way in, I start seeing people who I know or who I've interviewed before. It was quite lovely, actually, to just bump into a lot of familiar faces, including, well, I can list some names, really. As I walked in, I bumped into Alexander Partridge, who's on Instagram teaching French. And then in the line, I bumped into Nancy Ng, who used to be the producer for NBC and hooked us up with, I mean, for Americans listening who watched any of the Olympic coverage, I was popping up all over the place, which was also kind of baffling to me as an Australian, telling Americans what was going on for the Olympics. But we went in, and Lucille, who's on the podcast recently, French Vibes Club, I bumped into her, and Raphaël Métivet, who is the photographer who I went up on the rooftops with. It was kind of like a bunch of the people I'd interviewed on the podcast over all the years were just sort of popping up left and right, and then sort of very heavily making up the rest of the population, the rest of the guest list. There seemed to be an awful lot of military people dressed in the military uniforms, and people close to the embassy, I suppose, as well. And then, I found myself at the front. I grabbed, I think, a glass of champagne. I found myself up near the embassy. So the way that the embassy residence, and the way that they'd organized it is all along the sort of wings of this amazingly large garden were drinks and food and even desserts and so on. And in the middle, they had one big table where they had, chefs in the tall chef's hat serving out, I guess, hors d'oeuvres and drinks and so on. It was very beautifully designed with big white flowers everywhere, roses perhaps. And then they sort of called everyone to attention, and I found myself right up near the front unintentionally, which is bad news for everyone behind me in the 2,000 deep in the garden, because I'm quite tall. And the ambassador came out and said a few words. Before the ambassador came out, they did, it was the official ceremony, so they did they called it the presentation of the colors, which involved, I guess, some military, I guess it was 4 or 5 people with flags who walked down through everybody. And I don't know how they timed this so well. I literally don't know, and someone can write it and tell me, but as the military got to the front bearing these flags, there was a flyover it was so quick and so perfectly timed, and you don't hear it till it's basically happened, but from over my back shoulder 2 planes flew low and quickly, and really surprised me. I think it surprised everyone because we were looking the other way, but the timing, it was almost as if the planes were just hovering in the distance, ready for that the flags to be marched down to the front. But it was brilliant. What a display. And then there were national anthems, the French and the American ones. And then they had remarks by the ambassador and the guest of honor, Bernard Arnault. And so that went for about half an hour. My drink had run out at that point, and I was wondering, I'll be honest, I realized that would go straight into the performance. But at the same time, I was wondering if all the people who had hung out on the wings and at the back had a glass of champagne in hand or another one. Because then the performance went on for an hour after that. And it was brilliant. I'm a huge fan of the music of Andrea Bocelli. And I thought it was wonderful to be up so close. Not least because I'd just been to another opera thing a few nights earlier. You might have seen on social media at the Jacquemart-André Museum, which I can highly recommend if you're a fan of wonderful museums and great opera. But anyhow, I'm like, I don't know, a few people from the front watching this performance by Bocelli, and it was just spectacular. Although it wasn't lost on me that similar to how I felt a bit sort of out of place as an Australian there, to think that Andrea Bocelli is an Italian guy singing at the US Embassy in France. So it was a big old mismatch or hodgepodge thing going on, but it was brilliant to be there.
so che non c'è luce in una stanza quando manca il sole.
And then from there, they sort of said, don't go anywhere in a rush. There's going to be fireworks, and the military band is performing for the next hour or so. And in that hour was really when the sort of party began for me. The band was playing in the background, and I was mingling around, bumping into all sorts of people. I bumped into the Australian ambassador. Get this, Australian ambassador was standing really close to me, and she mentions that they're having if you listen to this show for a while, you maybe remember I did a big event at the Australian embassy on the top floor at that residence looking over the Eiffel Tower. And she mentions that they're going to have a Bastille Day viewing party up there. And she invited me along. So I'll be there for the 14th of July. Weirdly, on the 13th of July, although I know why this is, if you're wondering, 13th of July. 10 years ago on the 14th of July, so the Bastille Day, there was a terror attack in Nice, and to mark the 10 years, they've said that they're not going to do big celebrations and fireworks. Rather, they'll have something more solemn to mark it. So the party's sort of been pushed forward a day, 13th of July. Mark that in your calendars. In that hour is when I bumped into loads more listeners. Some listeners, but people who'd been on the show before, people like Anna Klutz was there. I bumped into Tanisha Townsend. I bumped into Jacqueline from Little Africa. People I'd interviewed in the past, all over the place. It was kind of this. It was quite a lovely feeling to see everybody gathered. And then, as it got dark, I stumbled into Ainsley Rose and her husband Lev. So she does those very viral online videos about baking in a tiny Paris flat, and her husband Lev is the coffee guy. He makes the coffee at Place Monge, which I sometimes sneak into when I do the Latin Quarter tour and say hello to him. Some of you listeners will know what I'm talking about. By the way, shout out to the Earful Tower tours. If you haven't booked one yet, get into it, theearfultower.com/tours. And then with them, I watched the fireworks. So when they put on these fireworks, with all these songs that Ainsley was saying mean a lot to Americans watching fireworks, they didn't mean anything to me, as I've never watched American fireworks like that before. The closest I could come was thinking the movie The Sandlot, or The Sandlot Kids, as we called it in Australia. I remember the scenes of July the 4th fireworks and that. And sort of had my own nostalgia, but they were firing them from the British embassy or the British ambassador's residence next door from their garden. So it was real. The proximity was awesome, and the fireworks lasted for a while. And then after that, usually these kind of events, they kick everybody out really quickly. But I was pleasantly surprised to see that they weren't quick to kick people out, and they sort of let it happen quite gently, I'd say, almost naturally, before they sort of started ushering everybody out, where they gifted everybody some delicious chocolates. And that was it, basically. So, I don't know, I took a bunch of pics and videos which we'll share on social media throughout this week. I'll revisit the video that I did inside the ambassadorial residence, which I think was quite nice. But I hope in this shorter than usual podcast episode I managed to capture a little bit of the vibe of what it's like to be at one of these events, because they're really something quite special about them. And thanks to the US Embassy for inviting me. I absolutely don't take it for granted to be there, and I think the least I can do is share what happened with everybody else who listens and who might be interested too, not least given the fact that I know an awful lot of listeners to this podcast are in America. So a happy 4th of July to all you guys. To everybody else, hope it was a fun insight into what these embassy parties are like. As for me, I think I'm going to go have a shower, because I've just come back from swimming in the Seine River. The Seine River, it's open again for jumping in. And perfect timing, really, because the second heat wave is about to hit Paris. It's about to descend on the city. People are ready to cool off. I'll be here, unfortunately, for this whole heat wave, I think. And it's likely that I'll escape probably to Provence, maybe to Sweden for the second half of these school holidays. So nothing is for certain yet. But wish me luck and wish everybody else luck. These heat waves are really something, especially for people, for the elderly, for the kids, and for anyone, including us, living under these zinc rooftops. It's just not very nice. That could be a whole different episode, but let's keep it positive. We're talking about embassies and we're talking about fun times. But yeah, if you like this podcast and you want to see it grow and thrive, then either become a member on Patreon or Substack, or check out the earfultower.com/shop, which is where all of our books, including the newest one, Sophie in Paris, are, or book a walking tour. Come and meet me or any of my excellent team members in Paris. We're very good at what we do. The reviews have been exceptional. I think there's 300 5-star reviews in a row, and it's recently been awarded by TripAdvisor. It's been ranked as the traveler's choice. I'm looking at it right now. There are 2,855 tours and activities in Paris, and right now the Earful Tower tours are ranked 22nd. So, come on. I was going to say there's no better way to see Paris, but apparently there are 21 other ways to see Paris that are pretty good too. But I think the difference here, as I look through some of the other ones, who knows what you're going to get on those tours. Here, you're going to get a tour written by me, the guy you've just listened to for the past how many episodes, I don't know. You might even have me as the guide. Otherwise, you have one of my excellent guides showing you the Paris that I want you to see. So on that note, thanks for listening. I'll be back again next week with, I think, the 16th arrondissement before we get into F, whatever that may be before. Thanks for listening. Have a lovely week. Merci beaucoup and au revoir.